it'd be nice if Mendocino County knew that there were another 50 residents that were receiving services elsewhere, that if, obviously, names aren't there, but just the county of residents of patients, if those reports were made available, and the same thing that Sonoma could use for Mendocino residents.
Well, I suggest you write a letter to Governor Schwarzenegger and say, would you please create a statewide registry of people with HIV so that we know where people live? You know, there is no mechanism for doing this right now at the state level.
In terms of the referrals that we're making, this has been one of my beefs in the past, as you know. It sounds as though we're getting a little more, for lack of a better term, aggressive at making referrals. Is that the case? Or, because when we started off, frankly, it was kind of a kid's glove approach. We're not going to push it on anybody. If they ask, we'll give them information, but other than that, it's hands off, and that was one of my beefs with the program. Are we becoming more, again, aggressive at trying to steer folks to these referrals?
I think I'm going to ask Libby Guthrie to speak to this, since she works directly at McAven with the clients.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
When the program first started a number of years ago, the philosophy was, if a client or customer wants information, great, we'll give it to them. But if he or she doesn't ask, we're not going to offer it, push it, encourage it, kind of a kid glove approach. What I'm asking, from the numbers that Mr. Selzer gave, the 900 some odd referrals out of 500 patients, just the numbers would indicate that maybe we're becoming a little more aggressive and encouraging of referrals out there. Or are we still having a kind of a standoff approach?
Actually, we very much encourage referrals, and we are fairly aggressive in our efforts. We actually do outreach. We do presentations at both the homeless shelter and at Ford Street on a very regular basis. We actually provide testing as soon as the educational presentation is finished. We also have testing for hepatitis C and for HIV. We also have one of our staff, John Weber, going to the parole meetings, the PACT meetings, and offering services, which people do not approach him at the meeting, but later on they do come into our agency. So the outreach efforts to people have been much more aggressive. And, McAven found out during the early years of the HIV epidemic, just how many people were in need of services that weren't self-identifying and walking through the doors and saying, I'm here and help me. They were finding those folks because of syringe exchange efforts and simply going out and beating the bushes and doing one-on-one education with people. So I think the answer to your question is yes, it's been much more aggressive in these last several years. I'd say probably since 99 or 2000, the efforts at McAven and Public Health have been much increased. We're covering the entire county with our satellite syringe exchangers, and those people are also trained to give messages, even if they're very small messages. Call these people, ask questions. We also have a literal open door policy with our syringe exchange. It used to be very, very kind of closeted and, find somebody off in, a back street somewhere. Well, people walk right into the agency now, and there's been a level of comfort that has grown over the years. People come in. They're timid, but they come in and they realize that there is a non-judgmental atmosphere there. It is very, very businesslike. This is what you need, and what can we do for you? And so along with a syringe exchange, there's also a message, there's questions. If somebody's uncomfortable with those questions, we back off. The next time they come in, we may ask another question. What kind of services can we help you with? And eventually, when people start to feel more comfortable after interfacing with our staff, they start asking for assistance. And any little piece of assistance will build on another and another and another. And we make some great strides with that kind of approach. So.
Well, I appreciate that, because at the beginning that wasn't the approach, and it was...
No, I understand.
And that was one of my concerns with the whole program, but because the goal is to get these folks into services.
It is.
Whether it's AODP or mental health, or public health, whatever those services may be. And sounds like we're getting there if you're getting twice as many referrals as you have patients.
And one other thing I wanted to add is that we do serve in this county people that are utilizing our public services are people that have moved from other areas. Probably anywhere from 65 to 75% of our caseload at any given time, particularly our HIV caseload, moved from another county into our area. So they may be accessing their medical care out of county, but they might be accessing here, and the funding is in the county where they were originally diagnosed. I think most of you probably know that, but we're doing it on a shoestring. So anyway, thank you.
And then, Mr. Selzer, one last question. Speaking of funding, are we utilizing the AB 110 funds?
No.
Is there a reason why we're not?
Can I look at my notes?
Sure. That's the last on the report. The last.
Yeah.
one.
You know, I think when I first heard about AB 110 and I looked at the state of our budget, it requires a match from non-general fund money. And I think at AODP, we determined that we just didn't have money that we could spare to match against AB 110 funds. So we didn't.
But we're using just general fund monies for the program?
Well, there's no money for needle exchange that comes from public health to McHaven.
Okay.
We all do this sort of on a volunteer basis.
Okay.
Have I answered your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes more sense. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The money
Please.
for the syringes comes from various and sundry private foundations.
Okay.
Is that also part of the
No,
question?
that's not part of AB 110.
Okay. So
But the present supply of the syringes
Is
through your
privately
agency
funded
is-
through foundations.
Right,
it's the time element that is not funded.
good.
Right. We all donate our time to this because hitherto you could not use this money
Right.
for people, for staffing, only for supplies. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are very welcome.
Supervisor Colfax,
Yes, Charlie, if you,
not so quick.
nice turn.
Yes, Supervisor.
On the horizon section of your report, you mentioned SB 1159.
Right.
And requested that if the supervisor are interested in seeing the sale of needles and presumably the collection of needles at pharmacies.
Yes.
You indicated an interest in seeing whether the supervisor would support this. We talked about this briefly at MSWA when we were talking about the collection of sharps and how it could best be done and so forth. And I was kind of surprised to see that we did not have a program in the pharmacies apparently as widespread as could be possible. So I would like to, if you would could volunteer some more time in terms of presenting the board with a model that we might be able to implement in conjunction with public health. It would be, I think, I would be happy to support that effort, and I think
Okay.
other supervisors would be inclined in that direction too, if it fits into the general frame of collection and distribution of needles, because the needle distribution program here, I have to commend you and all the other people connected with it for your really, I hesitate to use the word heroic, but for your very generous contribution of